Hello students, I hope you have seen my first video which I have made for the student of class 9th of first chapter Matter in Our Surrounding. Today I have made the second video of the chapter Matter in Our Surrounding under the heading Characteristics of Particle of Matter. The particles of matter have some characteristic property. The particles of matter have spaces between them. In the first video, I have described the spaces present in between the particles of matter by discussing the activities. The spaces which are present in between the particles of matter is termed intermolecular space. The second characteristic of particles of matter is the particles of matter are held together. They are linked together. When all the particles of a matter linked together, they constitute an object, a matter. The link which hold the particles of matter together is called intermolecular force, which we can understand by describing a structure of matter like this. Suppose this is matter and these are the particles which held together to constitute this whole matter. If this is a matter and these are the particles, so these particles are also called constituent particles, which may be an atom, a molecule, or ion, depending upon the nature of matter. And there are gaps in between the particles. These gaps means the empty space. This empty space present in the matter is called intermolecular space. Intermolecular space. And all these particles attract to one another. They are linked together by a binding force. The binding force establishes a link, established the links to held the particles of force to hold the particles of matter is intermolecular force. We have discussed about the empty space present in between the particles of matter by describing some activities in the first video. To understand the intermolecular force present between the particles of matter, we can describe another activity. Suppose you take a piece of paper. If you will take a piece of paper, suppose this is a piece of paper we have taken. When we used to tear this piece of paper, we need to apply a force to detach one part of the piece from the other part. And for that, we need to apply externally force against that force which hold the particles of these papers together. It means the particles of paper are held together by a certain force, by a kind of force. That force is called intermolecular force. Right? This characteristic property of matter, of intermolecular force and the intermolecular space are different in different matter, which we shall discuss in the next video when we shall study about the different states of matter. Now, the next characteristic property of particle of matter is the particles of matter are constantly moving. The particles of matter are constantly moving. The movement of particles of matter can be described by the observation of Robert Brown. Robert Brown, first of all, described the movement of particles called Brownian movement. When some pollen grains, he used to fall some pollen grain on the surface of water. and observe the movement of pollen grain on the surface of water. The teeny pollen grains are struck by the teeny particles of water fastly to cause the movement of pollen grains on the surface of water randomly. The pollen grain moves randomly on the surface of water. This movement of pollen grain was first described by Robert Brown. So, this movement, this zigzag movement, this random movement of pollen grain is called Brownian movement. The Brownian movement we can also understand. Sitting in our rooms, in our home. Suppose you are sitting in a closed room and a sunlight is entering into your room through a teeny hole, through a hole made in your ventilator. When you will observe that beam of light coming into your room from the outside, you will find the dust particles in the beam of light is randomly moving. The dust particles shows a random movement continuously in all possible directions. Have you seen it? I hope all of you have seen this condition. Knowingly or unknowingly, when you have observed the beam of light entering into your room, I hope all of you have observed this random movement of the dust particles in the beam of light entering into your room through a hole in the ventilator in your room. This movement of dust particle is also an example of Brownian movement. When one agarbatti, essence stick, you used to burn in a corner of your room, usually where we people worship our God and the goddess, we used to burn an agarbatti, that is a incense stick. The smell of the incense stick we can felt from different parts of our room and the homes. How does it? How can we feel the smell of the incense stick burning in one corner of our room into the other corner, sitting in the other corner? It means the incense, the smoke produced from the incense stick intermixed with the air present in our room, and the particles of the incense stick smoke reaches to our nose, so that we become able to feel the smell of that incense, burning incense stick. The process of mixing of the smoke produced from the incense stick into the air on its own is called diffusion. The diffusion is a process of intermixing of particles of two substances on their own. This is the process of diffusion by which the particles of one substance intermix with the particles of other substances. Hence, we have discussed the characteristic of particles of matter under 3 points: intermolecular space, intermolecular force, and the constant movement of particles. Means particles of matter are continuously moving. They are not static. They are always moving. So, we have discussed the movement of particles by understanding the 2 examples described by me: the movement of pollen grain on the surface of water and the movement of dust particle in the beam of light entering into our room from the outside, which is Brownian movement. This zigzag motion of the particle is called Brownian movement. In the prestige of Robert Brown, who first of all described the movement of particles. This is all about the characteristic of particles of matter. Hello friends, I hope you will get benefit of the video provided by me for you. In the next and third video, I shall discuss with the students of class 9th state of matter. States of matter we shall describe in the next video.